state is a fiercely competitive and ruthless society.
And now, After Hours with Rixx Javix.
Welcome to After Hours with Rixx Javix. I'm your host, Rixx Javix, coming to you from the darkest reaches of low-security space, live from the Stay Frosty Lounge. Grab a cold drink, light a cigar, and let's talk. And for those people who might be out there who don't know who the heck Apothne is, why don't you illuminate them?
So, I'm Apothne. I'm a member of Sniggerly in Pandemic Legion. I started the game in EVE Uni, moving into Snigwaffer and Sniggerly with a prime interest in Fleet Command. And since then, I've gotten really into the Alliance tournament as well. I've been fortunate enough to commentate two of them from Iceland, 12 and 13. I also work on staff for EVE NT Collides. I got to cast the Amar Championships live on stage last FanFest. And I write a bunch of stuff for Crossing the Zebras as well. I think that's pretty much everything. Oh, and I ran for CSM last year.
And you ran for CSM last year, right? And how long have you been playing EVE? When did you start?
So I created my character in 2010 with a few friends that I used to play StarCraft 2. I was massive, like, StarCraft 2 was my game before EVE was my game.
Right.
Like you know how for a lot of people you have, like, you'll play through the most recent AAA title, like you'll sink a bunch of hours to it, but that, like, you'll have a game and that is your game. Mm-hmm. Yep. Like, EVE is for a lot of people who listen to this podcast. Before I was into EVE, I was into StarCraft. So I created a character in, like, 2010, did some mining in high sec.
Right.
I quit for 2 years, and then I came back and thought that, like, this game is really cool, but I don't really know anything about it, so I joined EVE Uni, and that was in the end of summer 2012. Oh. So I guess really, like, 4 years I've been playing.
That's pretty recent, really.
Yeah, I'm a very young man. A lot of people assume that I'm like a 2006 guy, but I'm really not.
Right, it feels like you've been around for a long time. You're one of those guys, you know?
I think it's just because I'm everywhere and everyone's sick of me already.
Right, yeah. You've outstayed your welcome already.
Yeah.
So, that, I mean, that's true. I think some people, when I think of them, I'm always shocked to find out that they haven't been around as long as you think they have been. And it's true of a lot of people. And then there are those who have been around for, since 2006 that you're like, wow, really? Okay. I had no idea. So
I think it varies depending on how vocal people are. For example, you and I haven't spoken a ton before.
No, not at all.
But like, whenever I do stuff in EVE, I kind of have this naive thinking that sounds really cool. I'm going to do that now. So, like, I started FCing after my first ever fleet because I thought, that's cool, I want more of that in my life. Oh, there are no fleets going on. I guess I'll do one. And it was kind of the same with the Alliance tournament. Like, I really enjoy casting for StarCraft 2, and I was like, they're looking for casters for the Alliance tournament. I'll sign up to that. Like, not really expecting to ever get it, but then I kind of did.
Oh, so that's where that started. You were doing that for StarCraft as well, then, sort of casting. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
Not ever professionally.
No.
For, like, your dream hacks or anything, but for my clan and then a few kind of online tournaments. I worked at a site called SCV Rush for a while. I casted their weekly tournaments for a bit.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I've dabbled in StarCraft myself a few times. It never really stuck with me as much as other games have, but I've enjoyed playing it. I still have it on my computer, and I play it every so often.
Yeah, too.
Yeah, the game for me that was like that was Command and Conquer. And I don't know why, but I still have it running on my machine, and I dip into it every once in a while and play a few rounds. It's kind of a dumb game, and I really, at this point, I know everything there is to know about it, but I don't know why. It's just one of those things.
The way I got into EVE actually was I ended up running like this 3,000 person clan for StarCraft 2.
Right.
And I just burnt out completely because there was tons of problems and it was just all going to shit. And I was like, look, I'm fucking piecing out. Like, fuck this. I'm not taking an important role in any video game ever again. I'm not doing anything noticeable. I'm not like appearing on streams. I'm just going to play a game and be quiet and enjoy my life. And that lasted about a month before I started leading fleets.
Right. It doesn't work out that well. I think
I was just so tired of being in a leadership role from there. But I think that Eve is very, very different. Which helps.
It is, and I think we're probably a lot alike. That's the way I've been since I started playing. Was what sounds interesting? I'm going to go do that. So whatever it was, yeah, let's just go do it and see what it turns out to. So I was particularly interested in having you on at this particular moment, other than the fact that it just sort of happened by her happenstance, but to talk about the AT. We've got the ATs coming up here in a few weeks, and this year it's going to be, significantly different than it's ever really been before. In that, not only have a lot of changes been made to the game and ship classes and tier side have changed sort of the balance of power, but also we're going from 12 to 10. And I wonder if you had any thoughts, because we've been my alliance has been in practice now for 6 to 8 weeks, and we're still finding it difficult to sort of wrap our heads around how to, put comps together with 10 players. It's a lot easier when there's 12 because obviously your links and your logi and, things all sort of fall into place. With 10, it's a little bit more tricky. And I wondered what you thought the impact of that might be on the Alliance tournament.
I mean, the thought I had when I first heard of it has kind of come true in my mind from what I've seen from the open tests. I can't really speak to anything of PL internal testing without like Dankel's hands reaching through my monitor and strangling.
Right. We don't want that.
The core of teams is pretty much the same. So if you think about the Typhoon Fleet issue team that we saw last year, very, very popular team, that had a TFI core. So that was double TFI, a command ship, probably like an EOS, and then a Logi. And that's kind of the core of that team. Those 4 ships, like, they're the basis of that team, right?
Right, yeah.
The rest of the team...
That's almost half your team now, though.
Yeah. The rest of the team is the support wing. So that's your T3Ds, your E-War, your Frigs, your whatever. Before, you could just kind of just keep throwing ships in that support wing. Like, you'd have Merlins, you'd have Jams, you'd have Tackle. Whereas now in 10-man... if you have a bit of E-War, you still can't have a ton of tackle. You've got to be much more specific and dedicated in your choice of your support wing rather than just kind of throwing ships.
Right, if you think about it.
And I'm kind of, downplaying that already, you still had to make that choice before, but even more so now, you've got to be very, very particular as to where you put pilots in your support ring, even if the cores, by and large, are going to stay the same.
Right, and it's if you think about it, those 4 ships, that's almost half of the team already. The one thing that's challenging is that next 2, because you're kind of missing those. The 2 would usually be something with a little tank to it, right? Like a cruiser. A lot of the time
we saw teams filled out with like double Merlin because they're really low points and they've got a bunch of mids.
Right.
And like I think we're going to see much less of just like filler ships to fill out on points. Like everything's going to be very specific.
Everything's going to have a use and a purpose at this point.
There's much less redundancy in that sense as well.
No, I mean that's a very good point. I hadn't considered that because a lot of times you'd see that really the comp was 10 ships and they just threw 2 frigates on there for lulz or whatever. So you're not going to see any of that this time.
Yeah, I mean, the most irritating thing I've found about designing comps, like I've submitted something like 23 comps to the PL team because, like, none of them are ever going to be used because they're awful because I'm nowhere near as good as, like, like this is PL, like this is the kings of the Alliance tournament.
The gold standard.
But, like, I just really enjoy making 20 teams. And one of the most annoying things is that there's a gap in the points breakdown between 6 and 9.
Right.
So for those listening, I guess, you have 100 points to spend on ships, and each hull is worth a certain amount of points. So as you can imagine, ships go from frigates up to like cruisers, and then you hit 6 points, and then you jump to ships that are 9 and then 11 points, because the Ashimu's 9. I can't remember if anything's on 10, but then you've got like 11 afterwards with battle cruisers and stuff. And like that gap is a bit frustrating sometimes.
Right, there's no mid-level sort of mid-tier. It would be nice, I find a lot of the comps that we're coming up with, it would be nice if there was like a mauler or something that I could stick in the middle. Like something that was sort of bait tanky in a way. There's really no room for that sort of thing now.
Yeah, everything has to be fit for purpose with very little redundancy.
It does. And a lot of those ships, the ones you might consider to be filler or mid-class filler, aren't very good ships. They really only do one thing. That's the other thing. I think now we're looking at least this is how I've seen it so far, is more multi-purpose kind of ships. That are good at two things instead of or more than two things.
So say before you were trying to look out for your logi being jammed, right? You might have a Merlin with remote SIBOs on it and just sit that on your logi and help
try to stay alive as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
But now you don't really have the spare pilot sites for that extra Merlin.
Right.
So maybe you're taking a mid from your command ship, maybe you're taking a mid from your battleships if you're using a battleship team, and having that go on the logi. Sure, the Merlin dies quicker, but that's a mid. Like any slot on any ship that isn't doing the primary function of that ship is quite a big loss. It is,
and it's definitely something that has to be considered. Is it worth it or not? Well,
you don't your logi get jammed.
You don't. I mean, that's the end of the game, right? If your logi gets jammed, you're screwed. So,
I mean, that's one of the interesting things I found about eWar. I think that if you think about all the eWar modules, scripts are banned. You can't script your TDs, can't script your damps. But ECM is no change. You're not multispectral restricted,
right.
Which I think is a very interesting choice. I don't think it's necessarily a bad choice. I think it's very interesting. I mean, potentially moving everything to multi-specs would just kill all ECM teams forever. I don't really know. We're not kind of testing in that environment because it's not the case. But in Event T, we've been forcing multi-specs, and people still bring jamming ships. Absolutely do, but you don't really have jam teams.
Right. Not teams built around that anyway.
Yeah.
So I think all, I mean, if you agree, I think it's going to make for a better tournament. I mean, a better, quote unquote better.
I mean, there are other side effects as well. In that it sounds weird, but getting 20 people together to practice is so much easier than getting 24 people together to practice.
It is. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many practice sessions that we've had when we hit that number exactly at 10. When 12 or 13 people might not have been possible. So it's definitely been a benefit for us. We're not as we're a 600 and some odd people alliance, so we're not 12 or there's not 2,400 of us to choose from. So it's definitely helped a smaller mid-sized sort of alliances. I think in our case, I know for sure it has helped participation. Because our team is probably 20, 25 people, but getting everybody together at the same exact time is often a challenge, especially in the summer.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that probably excites me the most about the Alliance tournament is how level the playing field feels this year. Because, for the past couple of years, Hydra PL are kind of were the dominant forces of the Alliance tournament, right?
Sure.
For years and years. The Camel Empire came in, and Hydramel in inverted commas and all that stuff. But really, those two social groups of players were just way beyond everyone else. They were in a tier, a league of their own, if you will.
Yes.
Whereas now this year, there are 6 teams that I think could win, and I wouldn't be surprised. And then more teams that could easily kill any of those teams. And I think that's really, really good for competition. I think that's really good. I think that the Tuskers and PL are probably the two teams that I think if I had to put money on, it would be one of those two that I'd put on money to win. But there are I don't know, 6 more teams after that are they could totally kill Tuskers or PL, and I wouldn't be at all surprised.
No, I have to agree. I would definitely put my money on those guys if I was forced to gamble on it, but I don't do that. But I also agree that I think the attitude, and from what I've seen in all the teams that we've been talking to and practicing with, in the open stuff has been awesome. The test open practices and some of the other groups that have been having open practices. And of course, we haven't even gotten into Thunderdome yet, but a lot of that has been very helpful. And I think a lot of those teams that, we've been practicing a lot with certain groups, but we've also, just randomly pick up people that we've never even heard of before and practice with them too. And a lot of them feel the same way, that they actually have a legitimate shot this year.
I doubt they're going to win the whole thing. I wouldn't put my money on them. But my favorite team this year is the Polar Bears. Firstly, they have a great alliance name, and I've watched their open practice matches from Bayard J's Proving Grounds videos, which massive shout out to that because they're cool to watch. They bring really cool, semi-normal, semi-off the wall comps, and they beat NC, which are a really good team this year. They beat MC as well. That's going to be such a great thing. I really hope that NC face MC this year, just to screw with the commentators, which I'm not one of this year. Just have some. I can't remember if the low section Schlupin is in this year, because that was always a name to pronounce fast.
Right. Yeah, maybe. I mean, have you had a chance to get on the Thunderdome at all, or experience that?
I'm practicing with the PL team.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's another innovation that has happened this year. That's
Logi Bro is a god among men. He's so awesome.
Yep.
Thunderdome is incredible. It's really, really, really good. It's something that the AT has needed for a long time.
Absolutely.
And I'm really glad it's here.
Yeah, there aren't enough words really to say how important it is. I don't know that the regular fan base would know just how important it is to
Logi Bro in general. So last Alliance tournament was the first Alliance tournament that he was the tournament kind of manager on.
Right.
The year before, he was our cameraman for the main camera we had in front of the desk.
Okay.
And it was the smoothest run tournament in the histoof Eve. One day we actually finished on time. and people who aren't involved with any kind of production, be it theater or TV or whatever, I cannot express how amazing it is to finish on time.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, AT tournaments are kind of notoriously badly produced, right? I mean, it's almost
go that far.
Well, I mean, not bad, but they've had their issues. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And often to hilarious results, and not in a negative, but it's
one of
kind of funny.
One of the things that really helped is that between AT12 and AT13, which are the two I did, is the CCP really invested in having a Eve TV studio for the 07 show and stuff.
Right.
So whereas AT12 we were in a converted meeting room. And the other room was kind of like a room that they just kind of shoved all this tech stuff in that was another kind of room, and we were all kind of curtains and stuff.
Right.
AT13, we were in a studio, and next door was an actual CNC for TV stuff that is set up all year round.
Okay, all right. Well, that wasn't that long ago, was it? I mean, a little over a year ago now, I guess, when the 07 show... yeah. I mean, I'm having a hard time putting it into time context for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, it was before the last Alliance tournament, because I know that they'd already used the studio for that before we went over.
All right, well, then, you just brought that up. Let's do this. There aren't many people in the community who have had an opportunity to do the thing that you've done twice now, which is comment on the AT. I mean, maybe. I mean, I know this might be a little bit redundant for you, but for others, don't get to have that experience. I mean, explain a little bit about what that is like, from a personal standpoint. I mean, what's it like being there and hanging out with those guys, and what are some of the challenges that you have, facing the camera all that, that entire weekend and trying to have something meaningful to say?
For me, I have a background in theatre and a lot of improvised comedy and drama as well.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So performance, musical as well. I play the trombone, I sing. So performance for me is not something I'm particularly uncomfortable with. So when I first did the Alliance tournament, I'd flown in a match and watched an Alliance tournament. And when I got it, I was like, okay, if I don't do this right, I am going to be synonymous being the guy that knew nothing about the Alliance tournament and CCP chose wrong for years to come. I'd never live it down.
A little pressure.
So I really, really dedicated myself to learning as much as I possibly could. I made this 32-page document of all the history of all the teams, double-sided, and that was before I put in the team results and stuff of what was actually going on the weekend. I looked at Azor Skull's turret and Tech 3 Cruiser, graphs so I could memorize what all the turrets looked like and stuff like that, and I was really nervous. I did that before the interview. They didn't ask me about any of that stuff in the interview, but I mean, I really didn't want to screw it up.
Right.
So, and
Makes
then
a lot of
look
sense.
at the first weekend, maybe even the first 2 weekends I did. If you look at me on the analysis desk, like color commentary and casting, that's what I did in StarCraft. You know, shouty, exciting, encouragement, charisma, all that stuff. That stuff I'm very comfortable with. Being on the analysis desk, especially early on, was very, very difficult for me because, you know, sat next to Elise Randolph, back in Alien, people have been doing the AT for years. I really couldn't compare, and I think that one of the things that helped to some extent was that I made a very conscious decision not to make statements that I wasn't absolutely sure on, which made my analysis not very in depth a lot of the time.
Right.
But I think that it's better than just saying random stuff and being wrong. And I think that I kind of focused my explanation on kind of helping stuff who didn't watch the AT at all, because that's who I could talk to, and obviously it's a valuable audience as well. Like a lot of people, I get a ton of criticism for my AT commentary, and a lot of it's you know, fair enough that I haven't been flying enough to do it, like I didn't know enough about the AT. But I think that me and the you know, Elise and Squeebles, and then back in Alien first year and Chester second year, I do think we did as a group a very good job.
Oh, absolutely.
As we filled a lot of the different roles. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the new team dynamic works this year. But just kind of we focused on different things. And this year, playing with PL, I'm putting a lot of time into practicing with PL. I've learned so much, and I'm really looking forward to potentially applying next year to kind of taking all this stuff I've learned. Like I have not learned as much about the Alliance tournament since I spent that month hardcore researching teams. Like I'm learning so much so quickly at the moment.
So this is the first year you'll be actually playing in the AT, is it? Or did you do that once before?
I did that when I was in Waffles.
Okay, all right.
T11, I flew an Enyo in a match. I was told to go and tackle a Vindicator.
Right.
I went and I scram-webbed that Vindicator.
Nice.
But as you can imagine, an Enyo being on top of a Vindicator, which does in fact have a web fit,
It does, yeah. Doesn't last long.
Very long. I did my job.
Right, nice. Yeah, that's a death sentence right there. So, you know, a little experience, but I think this cast, I mean, just to speak to the cast issue and some of the criticisms, I think it's a little unfair because it's a lot like what we were talking about before we started recording, and that is, it's finding the place that you fit in, you know, and so much of that is also true about Eve in general. Also as a player, you know, to find that sort of niche that you fit, you know, that your play style, that your interests, and the way that you do things kind of fits into the greater scheme of things, right? And that, I mean, you know, in a couple of years, when I've flown with PL a few times or whatever, I might end up being, you know, the guy that has the more in-depth knowledge compared to the next new young guys that come up and start casting. Right. I mean, the most difficult time I ever had for anything Alliance tournament based was the only time I've ever felt truly angry because of a video game. Like me in real life, I don't really do anger. It terrifies me. Like I always tend to run away rather than get angry. Right. But so the second time I did the Alliance tournament was when there was a lot of hate going towards CCP Fozzie. I don't know if you remember the specific hashtag that was flying around. That's right. I've forgotten about that. Yeah, and if you meet Fozzie, oh, absolutely. In real life. And and if you work on the Alliance tournament with him, so you're working with him for quite a long time, right? It is so clear that he loves Eve so much. And not only that, he has an encyclopedic knowledge of everything Eve. Like, if you think, like, Elise or whoever has, like, a good knowledge of Eve, Fozzie is like, this robot. He is, like, a dev that a lot of other devs will go to if they can't remember another thing. Like, okay, what's this mean? Oh, let's go get... Right. Won't say his real name. But, like, so, like, the amount of hate went towards this man who loves the game so much, puts so much of his time, like, he lives and breathes EVE Online. Like, he puts so many hours into his work at CCP, and, like, I do not have enough praise to give this wonderful man. Nope. And having worked with him twice and just chatting with him, becoming friends with him and stuff like that, and so, like, seeing the vitriol from
absolute mongoloids
Yes.
who may very well have a valid concern. Okay, this this thing in the new SOV system might
Sure.
need a bit tweaking to be a bit more fun. Okay, these figures need to be changed. This feedback
Yes.
needs to be done. But I cannot truly understand all the hate for him that exists in the community, even to this day. Because if I could only pick 5 devs to ever work at CCP for
Right.
the rest of the existence of the
Right,
game,
right.
he would be on that list. He is one of the best, and people treat him as one of the worst, and it upsets me so much. So I've ranted about this now for a few minutes, but
no, it's a worthy subject, and I think it's one of the eye-opening things for me as well, having spent 5 years or so playing EVE without meeting any of the devs in person. At least I had talked to some of them on the phone or emails or whatever. But to make that pilgrimage to FanFest and to be able to hang out with Fozzie and Siegel and some of the others and meet them in person.
I mean, I'm not saying he's immune to mistakes or
no, of course
he's not immune to criticism. That's not what I'm saying.
No, but
he's just a badass, and we should be
we're lucky we have them.
Yeah, we are very lucky to have them.
We're lucky to have them. And not just Fozzie, but I mean, it's surprising how much they all care, really, about the game.
Absolutely.
It's a
Mimic as well. I've spent a ton of time hanging out with her. She is one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life. She is absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
Larrikin is hilarious,
amazing.
really cool to hang out with.
Yep.
There are so many of them that are just these wonderful, wonderful people in their crazy little island off the north of the world. It is wonderful, truly wonderful spending time up there whenever I get the opportunity to.
Absolutely. I agree. I can't wait to go back. I was so disappointed that we weren't able to make it to this year's, but we are already making plans for next year, so we're going to definitely try to be there for that, because it's...
I'm definitely going to FanFest next year. Yeah. It's a really good time.
Yep, I agree. Yes, we are very lucky. And, and I think the longer that you play, the more you realize that there's always something. There's always something. It's never going to... And I don't even know that we would really like it if it ever happened. I mean, imagine if tomorrow... a new expansion came out tomorrow, or a new patch, and everything was fixed. I don't think that we would. And
I lose my mind. So I've been playing the game for 4 years, right?
Right.
So in the last 18 months or so, I have not seen so many fixes and changes directly focused at things people have want changed for years and years and years before I even started playing. And for some reason, for some stupid reason, people are screaming as if the world is on fire. CCP's breaking everything. It's all wrong. If you go to Reddit 3 years ago, right? We need new POS system. Legacy code. We need new subsystem. Links are broken. We need this. We need that. We need the other. We're getting so much of that. We're getting so much of that in really cool, interesting implementations with new, amazingly dynamic gameplay. Yes, some of it needs to be ironed out. Some numbers need changing. Some aspects of it may be not living up to what we hoped it might be. Even Fatigue. Fatigue, in my opinion, is one of the changes CCP have made to the game, which is a massively unpopular opinion. I absolutely believe it feels bad, and it is... And it needs another look, and it needs to be changed, and that's going to be really important. But from where we were to where we are, in my opinion, has had a massively positive impact on the gameplay of EVE Online.
I agree, and I said this the other day to somebody yesterday, when in an Alliance Slack, we were talking about the Tier 3 changes, the on-grid links, and I said to someone, I can still remember being on Alliance comms when the strategic cruisers were released, and probably the first week that they were released, and in Alliance comms we were talking about how bad off-grid linking was going to be, and what a horrible mistake it was to have set the system up that way. And that's probably five years ago now. I mean, it's that long that we've been waiting for that sort of thing. So, they're finally getting around to fixing that, and that was probably one of the bigger, obvious things that needed to be done. And So but again, to my point, it's never going to be 100% fixed. There's always something that needs addressed, and it's always going to be that way.
And I think that generally speaking, if we talk less about the specifics of what's being changed, but more the style, if you will, so the move towards. So if you look at links becoming more on grid and requiring an actual person moving away from these mountains of alts and the dynamic gameplay and being able to screw with your opponent in more different ways, I think that Seagull is leading the team and all the other guys who made the decision are leading the team in a really good, positive direction for EVE Online. It's potentially very different to classic EVE, but I think that it is heading in a really wonderful direction, a direction a lot of people have been asking for, even if they don't kind of see it a lot of the time.
Right.
Again, CCP not immune to mistakes. Some of the stuff they do, I go, why? But
why?
That,
right.
But across the board, across almost everything, I could not be happier with my hobby being in the hands of that group of people and what they're doing with it.
I think it's a very drastic change from the first half of my time playing when CCP seemed to be not listening to the player base at all, and they were only implementing the things that they wanted to implement, and they weren't paying attention to us at all. And then it all pivoted around to the complete opposite direction, where they're actually paying attention to what we're saying, and they're distilling that. And not only that, though, and this is the important ingredient here, is that they're not just doing what the players want; they have their own vision, and they're molding what we want into that vision. Which I think,
if they did exactly what the player base wanted, this game would probably
be horrible.
It would be
absolutely. It would be awful, and it would be horrible. So you've got to take what the players want, what we all think is best for the game, and then
they're
sort of
addressing
mold
the
that.
concerns we have in there, and what we want in terms of, broadly speaking, and addressing it in the way that they think is best as game designers, as people who work on the game, as people with access to all the data. And again, they don't get it right all the time, but they're doing a better job of it than I've seen anyone else propose ideas for.
Yeah, I got a little bit of criticism. I think it was about a week or so ago when I had that article about CCP, about the players aren't really CCP's not about EVE. The player base is really, and I mean, again, that argument is an obvious one. The point of the article, however, which I got some criticism for, was that I think EVE has the opportunity to evolve into something that perhaps is almost unrecognizable to the way it started. And you sort of touched on that a minute ago too, is if we are moving along a path that has another 10 years onto it, 10 years from now, will the game be even recognizable as the game that started in 2006? And I don't know, and I think that's a kind of a unique opportunity. If CCP never gives up on EVE and keeps iterating on it, what kind of game are we looking at in 10 years? I think that's kind of fascinating. It's kind of that counter argument to EVE is dying that we hear all the time. And then what if it's the opposite? What if EVE doesn't die?
What does EVE dying even mean?
I don't know. I don't.
I have an article with Nidin waiting for publication. It needs a heavy editing pass, but EVE isn't dying. Sure, we're down 15k average concurrence since the peak or something.
Yes, about that.
But that doesn't mean EVE is dead. Less people are playing EVE, maybe. Sure. Is EVE dying? Is EVE dead? No. The lights on. They're investing money into changing and improving the game. EVE's the best it's ever been.
Yeah, it is. The game is better now than it's ever been before, and that is something that is hard to say about a lot of games. And I think that's something that EVE can take a lot of pride in. It's better today than it's ever been before, and that's unequivocal. There's no argument there to be made.
Yeah, I mean, they've been making changes recently that are kind of bad for instant player retention. A bunch of the jump changes, a bunch of the changes have gone through that are just going to turn off a lot of people from the game. And that's very brave of them. Because I think they're taking the view, and I'm really glad they are, that, okay, we're making these changes now. They're going to hurt like a son of a bitch. But we're making a better game. And that means that in the long run, by just having a really good game, old people might come back, new people will come in and enjoy this better game that we're making. They're making Eve the best way possible, even though some of the changes hurt the older guard, and even myself included as a relatively younger player, which is a weird thing to say. I've been playing this game for 4 years. I'm fairly young. I haven't been playing this game that long for 4 years.
Right. I know.
Like, what other games can you say that about?
Right.
From
Well,
maybe like Brute or...
Right. I would be more concerned if I started to see them doing things simply to satisfy the player base. I think that would be a bad sign. I think if we start
completely repealing Phoebe because of all the it's just going back to the way it was, guys.
Yep. We're gonna go right back. I made a funny the other day, but I thought it might be something that would be kind of interesting to do if they did it. Maybe it would make the player base appreciate things a little more. And that was every year on the anniversary date of the launch of Eve, we do a server setback. So the server goes back to 2006 for the day. So everybody has to play like with 2006 rules, right? and graphics and everything else. So we can all just appreciate how far we've come. Because I think, I remember those days. Not 2006, but I started in 2008. And even then, the way the graphics looked, the way the ships moved, all the things that have happened. When I look at old screenshots from 2008, I'm continually surprised about how much progress, even just visually and in the UI layout. I mean, those were the days of the old fitting windows, and just oh my god, the way the game looked back then, the way it plays and handles, and not just visually either, but from the server performances and the bugs and the
in the box.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. The game was rife with bugs back then. We had some really weird ones. And
okay, so we had the Battle of SH1, Supers and Titans versus Supers and Titans for the first time since, the new fighter UI, new Doomsdays, all that stuff.
Yep.
A lot of the stuff I saw post was like, this UI is unusable in massive tie-dye. It's all broken. It doesn't work. CCP screwed it up. They should have just left things the way they are. Everything's broken. CCP did a horrific job. CCP are awful, stupid idiots, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Oh my god, we have amazingly cool Doomsdays. The fighter system's been reworked to be a super interesting, dynamic style. Yes, it broke in massive tie-dye, and a few parts of the UI absolutely need to be changed and looked at. But like 80 to 90% of the change we got was epic, awesome, amazing. And the fact that so much of it was so amazingly good and provided such awesome gameplay when we fielded them on literally the first real test after implementation is fantastic and wonderful. It shouldn't be CCP are dumb, this is stupid, everything's broken. It should be, wow, this is amazing. We got these few problems here. We'd really like you addressed. Like, this sucks. This is bad. This is a list of things that are a problem, why they are wrong. Here, have this CSM, have this CCP Evo forums. But was really cool and amazing and fun. Like, oh my god, dude. Like, I don't understand why people in game are so averse to being happy. Like, well, not only are the player base risk averse.
Right.
Like, a lot of times it feels like they're averse to being happy.
They are a little bit, I think. But I also think it's change in general is tough for people. You get into a rut, and you like things the way they were, even though they weren't great, but they were the way you got used to it. And it's a lot easier to be apathetic above it all and look and make yourself feel better by shitting on someone else than to actually put yourself forward and kind of like say, this is really cool, this is great, and have someone smack you down. Right. Well, the funny thing I always kind of remember is when I started, how those were the days where that learning cliff graph that we've all seen came around, and everyone talked about how complicated Eve was. And this was in 2008. We didn't have wormholes, we didn't have strategic cruisers, we didn't have links, we didn't have a lot of the things, and it's only gotten worse from a complication standpoint over the years. Right? It's so much more complicated now. There are literally probably 10 times the amount of things to learn in Eve now than there have ever been before. And I think, it's a good thing. Change is a constant in life, just as it is in Eve. And I think it's just something that people generally resist, though. It puts them off their footing.
Speaking to your point about kind of the new complex stuff, I think that a bunch of the changes came through, like especially when the probe changes came through, was a good example of this. Was that a lot of things in Eve were very, very difficult and complex because it had a really crappy UI or was really poorly explained.
Yes,
that is not good complexity and depth.
Right. It's
good complexity and depth makes things very, very easy to do at the most basic level.
Right.
But if you want to be good at something, you then have to put a lot of time and effort into it. Like it should be like most, if not all things in games, I should be able to explain to a person on their first game, they go, I understand what you said completely. And then they'll go and do it. They'll see all the buttons that allow them to do the thing, and they'll try and do it, and they will fail miserably. They will fail entirely and go, okay, I understand this, but whoa, this is really hard and complicated and nowhere as easy as I thought it was going to be in terms of a depth standpoint.
Exactly. How do I get better at this?
Yeah,
what am I missing?
I cannot do this at all. It's I can do this, but how do I get good at it?
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's where we are now. You know, the UE, in general. Again, all these statements are in general. I mean, we can all pick apart, certain aspects of things that need to be addressed and fixed, and we all right. I mean, there are those things that still hauntingly weird. I still don't know why they unfit my ship and undock button on the menu are so close together. It's just those kind of. It gets me every once in a while. Instead of undocking, I've just unfitted my ship. So because I'm an old player, I mean, I've been playing for so long. I have all the, don't please ignore this the next time buttons clicked. So I don't get that second warning. Like, are you really sure you want to do this? Because that just gets annoying. I've turned all those off. So, most of my things are instantaneous. But there are a lot of things like that. But again, in general, the design, a lot more thought, it seems, is going into the implementation of things than previously. Does that make sense? Because I think when they and you mentioned this with the carrier implementation, the fighter squadrons and things, and I haven't experienced the Titan changes because I don't fly Titans, but the carrier stuff, I think that's a great example of a system that perhaps in the in the old days would have been itinerated on over a course of 2 years. And instead, we've sort of gotten this fully formed package on day one.
Yeah, and it does need changes. Don't get me wrong. It has bugs it needs to be fixing. Sure. The UI problems that people complain about are absolutely real, yes. And we do need them looked at sooner rather than later. But we're getting really cool, well thought out from a design standpoint, even if the execution's not 100% yet. Stuff.
Right.
I think that a lot of a problem that a lot of people have is that how long it can take for CCP to get to things, and I think that's just a thing that we have to live with. So I mean, CCP have a X amount of resources, right? They have this amount of devs who can work on this many projects at any given time.
They are a surprisingly small company. They are.
They really are.
They're a very surprisingly small group of people, right?
Yes. And so when you look at the T3D rebalance, that has been sorely needed since the Svipple was introduced to the game.
Yes.
18 months ago or something?
Yeah, give or take.
But yep. They had to go, okay, either we do the Svipple now, or the people that are going to be working on the Svipple we need for the new Citadels, and we delay the release. We delay working on Citadels and the sub changes for 2-3 months, whilst other people work on other stuff or whatever.
Right, and that was not going to happen. No.
Yeah, they have to prioritize, and it sucks, and it's really irritating. And I would love if CCP had $1 million billion. Go, look, we'll just hire 20 more devs.
Right.
And then in 2 years, after they've all been trained up and they've understood things, you'll get, balance updates every 5 minutes. And again, I'm not saying that it's all the players' fault and none of it's CCP's fault. Mr. Hyde is currently pushing for having, quarterly balance updates that are regular and promised to kind of keep on top of this stuff. So we don't have, the Svipple being awful for 18 months, or we have the Ishtar being horrific for 2 years.
Right.
They're absolutely legitimate.
And I totally support that, by the way. I think that's the balance is something that would be nice to have a more regular update on.
Yeah, Mr. Hyde has been doing an amazing job on the CSM, as well as Jin Tan.
Yeah.
Like those two, from people I've talked to and speaking to them as well, like they've really fulfilled what I wanted to see from people on what I want to see from people on the CSM.
No, it seems like from everything I've heard and from who I've talked to too, it seems like this year's CSM, as a general rule, has really gotten it. And it's sort of fallen into what I think a lot of people struggled with for the last 8 or 10 years is what the role of the CSM truly is, and then how best to implement that.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it was needed for CSM 10 to be so rocky for the people who were willing to put themselves forward to do it, to like really, really get to grips with what the CSM was going to be.
Right.
So I mean, like maybe it had to be as bad as it was for it to be as good as it is now. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to reach bottom before you can start back up again. I don't really want to classify everyone that served last year as reaching bottom, but I think again, as general. Generally
speaking,
terms,
CSM 10 had issues.
It had issues. Right, let's not point fingers, but yes, in general, they had issues. I think everyone would agree with that.
I mean, that's why I pulled out from running. I mean, like, I knew that CSM 11 really, really, really needed to be jam-packed full of the best possible people.
Yes.
And with the stuff that happened to me in March, I really couldn't do that. I didn't believe I would be able to do that anymore.
Right.
So, I pulled out.
Well, I think it's the best thing to do sometimes. You can overextend yourself. Real life, obviously, before Eve. And I think that's been a lesson that I've learned very hard over the last 2 years for myself, too, is that, I tend to get involved with everything because I have a hard time saying no. But real life is more important, and you've got to find a place where you can pull back a little and take time for yourself too. And it's a hard lesson to learn. I think we all sort of burn out on Eve from time to time. It has a way of sucking you into it,
The response I got from the community for my campaign was like amazing. Like I learned when the votes came out that I appeared on more ballots than anyone else by about 1,000 ballots.
Right.
Which amazed and overwhelmed me. But I only found out a few days ago. I was chatting to Jin Tan, who had in turn spoken to Fuzzy Steve when that data came out, but word hadn't reached me. That I was like 3rd or something. Like I would have been a permanent attendee. Nice. So I haven't really had the opportunity to say publicly, and I'm just going to steal your show to do that. Like, thank you all so much for believing me. Like, I was genuinely like overwhelmed and wowed that like how like the support I got from the community, and that's really fucking awesome. So thank you everyone listening, even if you didn't put me on your ballot. Just thank you for being awesome people that play EVE Online.
Yeah, excellent. Very good news. I did put you on my ballot, by the way, and I know I know a lot of people did. So it's a testament to the EVE community. I think we get a lot of shit thrown at us from a lot of different angles, but in my experience, and I can speak from personal firsthand experience, there is no other group quite like it. And we spent a lot of time in this podcast talking about the negative side of that and how vocal some of the wrong things is. It's always important to me to remember that is a minority opinion.
And even then, a lot of those people are brilliant, wonderful people. Like the people I said that were complaining about the UI of the Super and Titan stuff. Like, these are people who I still hold in really high regard, and I very highly value what they say. Like, I've learned, like, one of the reasons I went to PL, like, me choosing that as an alliance to join, was to learn about FCing and about all the other things of the game that you can learn from PL. Because PL, does house some of the best minds that are in, EVE Online in terms of understanding mechanics and performing certain tasks, especially like Fleet Command in the Alliance tournament, for example, which are my two main.
Right, and no one in EVE believes that
a lot of the reason that things get so vitriolic and things get so heated is because people care so much. They are so passionate, and they have put so much time, and they have such a depth of understanding of the game that it's absolutely understandable to get emotional and to kind of like perhaps get your temper get the best of you on certain issues because you care and have such passion.
Absolutely, we've all done it.
They're all by even the people who are really angry and shouty, most of them are still really awesome, cool people that I enjoy hanging around with.
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, and I think that we've all done that. We've fallen into that trap. I have. I've done it before. I've yelled and screamed at the walls because of certain things. But I think it's important to remember that that element is part of the game, but it's also a very small part. The vast majority are silent. And I hate to use that term because it has bad connotations here in the U.S. especially. But it is true. I mean, the vast majority of players are not like that. They are extremely positive about Eve, or they wouldn't be playing it. I mean, what is it about this thing that grabs us all? Like you said, what other game can you say that I have been playing for, in your case, 4 years, in my case, 8? I've never done anything for 8 years other than, be married and to a horrible person, and raise children. I mean, there are things in life that you do, but I would never have thought in 2007, say, that there was a game on the horizon where I would not only play it, but stick with it for 8 years. I mean, that's insane. It's kind of insane when you think about it.
And it's really cool talking to people who've been playing the game for ages and just kind of learning about their journey through the game. Like speaking to yourself. Like last night I was speaking to a friend of mine on the PL AT team called Lucas Kwan. He's been on the PL team for ages and ages. He's not, a big name in the media, like your Killer Bees or your Shadoos or whoever.
Right.
But like, he's a super interesting guy, super intelligent, super cool to talk to.
Right.
Like super passionate, and like we had just like a really cool chat for like an hour and a half or something about the Alliance tournament and our interest in the game, and like just I really love that about Eve. That you have people from all over that can just kind of like, you'll just sit down and you could have entirely separate real lives, like you could be complete polar opposites. But when it comes to Eve, people have such amazing stories, have such insight into your hobby as well. Like a lot of stuff that gets said in the media is like, oh, having these friends and the meetups and just kind of talking about stuff, not Eve. Like that is wonderful and brilliant, and I'm not trying to downplay that at all.
No.
But speaking to someone who has true insight and depth of understanding into certain parts of the game that you're interested in is just like, it gives me a massive nerd boner. Like I'm lucky enough through the work I do with tournament stuff to chat with like people like Sutonia and Gorski and Hyde and Lucas Kwan and all those other people that are like in that top level of understanding on certain topics in Eve, and like it is so amazing to talk to them. And like I've not ever tried to pretend to be one of those people in terms of depth of understanding. And one of the reasons, like, this is something I actually wanted to bring up on this podcast because I get to have a platform to say something. I'm sorry, I'm just like stealing.
No, it's okay. That's the whole point.
It's that I write a bunch of stuff for CZ, like especially to the Alliance tournament and ship fittings and fleet commanding, because they're
right.
I get a lot of flack sometimes, and absolutely rightly so, for being wrong about certain topics or like missing stuff out, or like I make mistakes. I'm human.
Absolutely, yeah.
And a lot of the time I get stuff for like being, okay, you're not an Alliance tournament person, or you're not a real FC. You shouldn't be writing about this stuff. You don't know enough about this stuff. Like, wow. I absolutely agree with those people, but the people who really are the top end FCs, who really are the top end Alliance tournament gurus, aren't writing anything.
No,
I like, whenever I write stuff, I desperately try and pull them in. It's like, hey, can I get your opinion on this? Hey, can you talk to me about this? Like, I recently did a series collaboration with Mr. Hyde about battleships. Right. I did one with Sutonia about Alliance tournament teams. The 80 ship series that I'm doing at the moment, I've got Casper24, who's in PL now, previously in Hydra Reloaded. He's got more kills with the Maraca than anyone else in New Eden, and I think he's like third for the Chromalis as well. Nice. I'm getting him to help me co-write the part that has those ships in it. Nice. And like, I love talking and listening to clever people about things I'm interested in, and I think a lot of other people are like that too. But I'm like, guys, please come and give your knowledge to the rest of us. We're super interested in it.
Yeah.
Like if you look at AT coverage by players this year, previous year, like I bring this up all the time, and I don't mean to be mean to them, because they do run a great podcast. It's like the Cap Stable podcast. Sure, you've heard of it.
Absolutely.
They had 80 coverage on their podcast after the last Alliance tournament. They did like 20 minutes coverage, 13 of which was them talking about the tightness of my shirts, how I'm a poor European that can't afford them. I can set up a PayPal, and where are the articles from everyone else? Where are the podcasts from everyone else talking about how awesome this AT is going to be, talking about Alliance tournament ships, talking about the teams? Like,
right.
I would love to not write about any, like, I love writing about it, don't get me wrong, but I would love for it to be the case that the EVE media market was so saturated with all the people that are way more intelligent than me talking about the things I care about, so that I could read their stuff instead of like filling that niche myself. Like I would be so happy if there was so much stuff by way more intelligent people that I couldn't do any of the things I do. Like I would love that.
I have the same exact thing, and people always ask me when I used to blog more often, why aren't I talking about fittings or how to do this or that in the technical side of things. I am a student of very small. I didn't start out this way, but over the years I've gotten to be a student of a very small, narrow-minded niche in EVE, and that is low-sec piracy.
Everyone is. No one can master anything but the tiniest of niches.
Low-sec piracy, that's my thing. And that's pretty much all I focus on. Now, I obviously, as a podcaster and as a writer and as a blogger, I pay attention to all the other stuff, and I keep up with it. And I feel like I'm generally knowledgeable about all aspects of EVE, but I'm an expert at this part of EVE, and that's all I really feel like I could be an expert at. But even so, even having spent the last 4 years of my EVE career focused like a laser beam on that one section of EVE, I am not the best person at that. And there are people who I rely on, who I talk to, or who I hang out with, who are much better at certain aspects of even that part. Maybe not the whole picture as much as I am, but as far as fitting a frigate, there are people whose opinions I respect more than my own when it comes to that. And so, speaking out on a certain type of subject, I always feel like, you really should be listening to this guy, or you should be talking to so-and-so. And I think
even those people have their own heroes. Like I was talking to Casper the other night. So he came from Hydra. He and Blue Melon kind of brought a bunch of the expertise and especially kind of the execution and communication to the PL team. Like obviously gaining pilots from Hydra, even in PL, is a big boon to the strength of our AT team.
Sure.
And then, talking to them, and me as a very young person, especially in the Alliance tournament in terms of being a pilot and actually doing the damn thing, I have learned a vast amount from them and a bunch of other people in PL who I shouldn't neglect to mention, just by listening to them and chatting to them, because they're lovely guys and are up to chatting with their teammates about stuff. But then you talk to them and they go, how you feel talking to me is how I feel talking to, Garmin and Duncan Tanner.
Right.
And it's like, it makes me so sad, even, love them or hate them, whether they, did bad things in EVE or whether they were the best people in the world and just got tired. It makes me so sad every time somebody quits the game, even if they're quitting the game to have a wonderful real life, and they're doing all this cool stuff and it's a better move for them, or they're just leaving the game because they wanted to, and it's fair enough. That's wonderful. I'm really happy for them. I'm so sad that we kind of lose that experience and that expertise. I'm partly really, really sad, and this may sound weird to a lot of people coming from a PL guy. I'm really sad that Camel and Hydra don't exist anymore. Right. Because they were two teams that were at the absolute top of the Alliance tournament game. We this year are not going to see the best team in the history of the Alliance tournament. Right. I think that none of the teams this year, as far as I can tell, are going to be as amazing as Hydra or PL were 2-3 years ago. When they were really, really at the top of their game. I think the playing field is going to be more level, and it's going to be a better tournament. Absolutely, it's going to be a more entertaining tournament. But if you are one of those mega elite people of supreme intellect and understanding of Alliance tournament stuff, I think it is kind of sad that we won't see as much of a demonstration of just absolute perfection in terms of what a AT team can be. Like, not saying that they're perfect, like absolute excellence.
I think I know what
like
you're talking about.
Like again, they're going to be brilliant teams.
Absolutely.
They're going to be amazingly strong teams that do really cool stuff that come with new meta, and it's
Yes.
going to be wonderful. And the fact that everyone's on a much more level playing field at the top this year is going to be amazing in and of itself. And I think that is absolutely much better, and I would much prefer that. But there is that kind of sadness at this loss of expertise, and Hydra and Camel splitting into lots of different groups and kind of like diluting that information, and that's information shared, going to other people, and other people get to learn about it. Like it is an absolutely great thing. Like it is wonderful and good in all ways, but it does kind of have that bittersweet aftertaste of we don't get to see the absolute best of the best potentially this year.
Every time a player leaves EVE and doesn't come back, anytime it leaves a hole, and it doesn't matter how big. Sometimes that hole's bigger than others. It depends on the type of player. But I mean, every time that someone steps away from EVE, it leaves a hole, and that hole is sometimes never refilled. I mean, it's just a lack of. It's a sadness in a way because, again, the game is ever evolving and ever changing. And that goes along with the player base. The player base is ever evolving and changing as well. And new people are going to be coming along.
Kind of like, sorry, I keep interrupting you. I've been doing it the entire time. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's not my podcast or anything.
No, it is. I'm sorry. I'm
it's
sorry.
perfectly fine.
I get told off for this on the live tournament as well. I interrupt. I actually desperately try not to on the AT, and I speak to my co-casters, but about it afterwards. But sorry. I did it again. Sorry.
I told you I had interviewed Nash, and the recording got messed up last week, so I've got to do it again. But I told him, and he talks more than you do. I told him, I said, I'm going to ask you a question at the beginning, and then I may not speak again. So it's perfectly fine. That's the whole point of this, is to have a conversation. And I'm on every episode, so you're not. So it's more important.
I'm on everything else.
Yeah. So, but again, I say too that the other side of that too is that they may surprise you. We're all making a lot of assumptions about this AT coming up, and I think
there are going to be brilliant teams.
There are going to be. There may be some surprises. Amazing. Right. There may be some surprises there that will. But again, there's no replacing those people. There's no replacing the alliances that have died that were brilliant, the people that have gone on to real life. There's no replacing them.
I think that the best example of this for people who aren't necessarily in the AT and might not get what we're talking about is Black Legion.
Right.
That's
a good example.
Very widely respected group for just being. Like, they had that roving dread fleet for ages that would just drop on everything. Yeah. Like, they were PL's main kind of nemesis for a little while, even.
And Rooks and Kings.
I mean, that was, that cult of personally around ELO. Whenever ELO leaves the game,
right,
especially to not just the people of Black Legion, to everyone playing the game, that is a significant loss of that entity, of his experience and his ability to FC. Like, if you talk about, to a lot of the guys that are in Black Legion, if ELO came back and properly came back and not just for 6 months, so many of them would flock back to him in the same way that, if Garmin came back and there weren't any issues with being banned or anything for Kadesh or whatever, tons of the Hydra guys would just go back and be Hydra again. That was it for us. Those people with that level of insight and understanding, if we look at exclusively that and not everything else surrounding their character, good or bad, that insight and that intelligence, that's probably my main draw to the game, personally. I mean, I really my favorite thing in the world is somebody who is a million times smarter than me telling me about things that I'm interested in. I am never happier than when I'm in the situation than when I'm made to feel absolutely stupid by a very kind, very intelligent person.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's those moments when I can look back over my career at EVE and remember the moments when in a conversation or on comms or somewhere that someone said something that fundamentally changed the way I looked at the game. And it even goes back to my first week in Eve, where I was driving to a Stargate because I didn't know that you could warp. I didn't read anything about Eve. I just started playing.
You trying to like slowboat to a warp gate?
Well, there was a gate, and my ship was. I'm like, okay, so I have to drive over there, right? So and
you just said, okay, well, I'll come back in an hour when I get there.
Yeah, this was taking forever, and I can still remember the first conversation that I had in Eve with a player in local who invited me to a convo, and this is 8 years ago, and invited me to a convo, and the window opened up. This is the first convo I'd ever had in Eve, and the advice they gave me was that you right-click on everything, right?
Yeah.
Right-click on everything, and that. Well, obviously, that changed my entire that changed my entire game. I mean, again, we're talking about first day, right? So, but again, all along there have been those moments where brilliance or the way that other people perceive things. I think a lot of times we get very focused and tunnel visioned on the way we see things, and then sometimes. And it's also that joy of this being a global community and people coming from different backgrounds, and a lot of times I've learned so much, not just about Eve, but about life in general too, about other people and other cultures, and also how they perceive things. And then that education has been it's one of the things that makes it worth it. That makes the sticking it out. It's an odd situation, but it's totally worth it, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that moments of brilliance. The same as I would in real life, hanging out with, terribly brilliant or creative people. And I think that Eve is like that as well. So it's an odd sort of thing, but
for maybe a year, I think that's been a big part of my focus in terms of because I think that for people who are, this is really bad because I hate talking about myself like this. Like, I'm like a D tier celebrity in Eve. Like, I'm a somewhat known name. It's fair to say.
Yes, absolutely. You're space famous.
Again,
everyone hates that.
Thing is, if I just said that, I would get so much flack. Like, I need to put in a massive disclaimer. I'm aware that I'm like a D tier, Mittens, Alicia, like they're the real gods. Right. I am a lowly, shouty guy that you can't get rid of.
You can never say that about yourself.
There's a big difference between the stuff I do, like being on podcasts and doing live stream, and the kind of person I am in game, and then the person I am in real life as well. So like my focus on my media presence for the past year or so, not my focus on the things I do in game. The focus on my media presence, like the past year or so, has been like, okay, there's a bunch of really cool people that I've met that know crap tons about the game that I find really interesting, and there's the rest of the community, with regards to that aspect, would probably love to hear about it. How do I make those two things collide in a really happy, positive way?
Nice.
Which, again, is like why I've been doing those collaborations on CZ. And like that's like, again, what we were just talking about. Like, I just really like learning about things and sharing learning about things. And in real life, like I work as a mathematics and physics tutor.
Okay.
So, like, I just love sharing my passion about things with people.
Right.
Like that's like if you kind of had to break me down as a human being into a sentence, I just have passions that I like sharing with people, and having people share their passions with me, and like that's just like that's what I look for in life.
I think that it would be shocking to hear that from people, because I think it comes across in your personality. I think it comes across in the things that you've been doing, and I think it comes across in your writing and stuff as well. So I'll give you kudos for that, because I don't think that anyone would find that shocking at all, because I think it comes across in your personality and in the words you write and stuff. So I think that that's brilliant, and I think that we're the better for it as a community. And I mean. And it's not all that unusual. I mean, the entire reason that we talked about this before we started recording the podcast, is the entire reason for this podcast was the same thing, really, was I wanted to find interesting people and have an interesting conversation with them. And that was the end of it, really. That was the only driving for
Like, if you don't stop me, I'll be just like, we'll be recording for like 8 hours.
Yeah, right. Well, we are reaching the end of our talk, so I wanted to go back and touch on something earlier because you mentioned something that used to be close to my heart because I was also a trombone player in my younger days. So I heard you say you played trombone. I would like to hear a little bit about that. Do you still play, or was that a high school thing? Or
actually haven't touched it in about a year and a half.
Okay.
It's sat next to me. Like, I can reach out and touch it with my hand.
Right.
So I started playing when I was 6.
Oh, wow.
I grew up, the church my family went to was Salvation Army.
Okay. All right.
So,
all right.
I started playing the cornet when I was 5, and I cried every time they put it in my hand. I really didn't like it. So I quit that for about 6 months, and my mum said, "Look, the junior brass band needs a trombone player. You're going to start playing the trombone."
Wow.
And I kicked and I screamed, but like, I met my mum. But if my mum decides something's going to happen regarding her children,
right, then it's going to happen.
It's gonna damn happen. So so I played in brass bands in the Sally Army for years and years. Then I was in bands at school. I was probably in like 5 bands at a single time between the army and in school.
Right.
And then at school, I kind of really got into jazz music when I started, being able to play well enough to be able to get involved in jazz music. And
excellent.
I was also in the choir at church because, of course, I bloody well was. Because mother. But I really moved into loving jazz singing as well. So like I was a trombonist and a singer in the school jazz band, and then I was in a few groups we had with friends. Nice. Then at uni, I was in a brass band, and then most recently, what's kind of taken over from the trombone playing has been being in improvised musical theatre. For maybe a year and a half now, I've been in an improvised musical group. We did a run at Edinburgh last summer. In fact, I did, I think it was 3.5 weeks of a show a day at the Edinburgh Fringe, and then the Alliance tournament.
That's a lot of work.
I came home and slept for about 4 days. Because
yeah.
Especially, even whilst I was doing the Edinburgh run, I was writing those team summaries I do for Crossing Zebras, which take a lot of time to write.
Yes, absolutely.
So like I did those, I slept so much when I got back from last year's AT because I just completely burnt out. But
yeah, I can imagine so. I mean, for those who don't know, and I've been around that sort of world myself a few times, but putting on a show like that is a tremendous. Not only is it a tremendous amount of work, which you would expect, but there's an emotional load too to that.
The shows plus rehearsals and actually enjoying the Edinburgh Fringe, going to see other shows. Like who aren't familiar. What we do with our improvised musical, it's an hour-long show. At the beginning of the show, we take the title of a musical, which is not actually a musical. It's just a phrase like, I don't know, the fish have gone off, I think is a musical we did at some point. And we'll also get the name of the main hit from that musical, so the main song in that musical, which could be, I don't know, I've fallen out of the aeroplane. And then with those two things, we produce an hour-long musical.
Wow.
None of and a lot of people think, you secretly know all the tunes. You've got a set number of tunes that the guy on the piano plays to you. Right. You've got a certain song styles you do. You've got certain formats you use. You'll have certain, like, this person is always going to be the protagonist. This is always going to be the format of the story. No, it is genuinely made up on the spot for 50 minutes. And
you make it all up on the spot, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, one people don't understand because they're not in the business is that there are, of course, certain standards, and then again that helps you. That forms a sort of a basis behind which you can rely on. There's 3/4 time. There's 4. There's only so many ways to meter. A song.
So like people who've watched Whose Line Is It Anyway is a great example. So
right, exactly.
Wayne Brady in the US version of the show used to do a piece where he would make up a song given a song style. Right, It would be like, you've got to sing about being a greengrocer in the style of rock. Right. And kind of that's all you have. And the music was rock style, and you use your knowledge of rock music to kind of try and pretend to sing in that style.
Right.
That's really all you're going into it. And it's a really fun challenge. The guy that runs our group is a brilliant man. He's wonderful, really nice guy. he was in a group called Showstoppers. I think he helped found it, actually, and they're the first improvised music to ever get a run at the Apollo in London.
Oh, nice.
Which they were doing at the end of last year, I think. Like, he's a really brilliant encyclopedic knowledge of musicals, and I'm very lucky to get to.
How many people are in the group that you perform with? What size group? It varies.
Like between like 6 and 10.
Yeah.
We tend to have approximately 6 defined characters in a given show, and the rest of the people will form an ensemble. So they're kind of like they do backup dancing and singing for the songs, or they'll be like props in humorous ways. Like once I was on an ensemble once, and I was the sexy train. So like one of the guys who's playing a character pointed at, look at that train. We were at a railway station. Look at that train. It's so attractive. And then I just ran up and just like did a kind of sexual pose whilst pretending to be a train.
Nice.
And like that just became a running theme of the show, and the show became about the sexy train. Just like random stuff. Like I love theatre work, and partly that's why I love casting and all this media stuff I do, like and performance. Like
sure.
As surprising as this is, and even though I call myself a media whore all the time, I'm not actually a massive fan of like huge amounts of attention and like whoring myself out. Like I don't run off the attention. I run off of working on projects and things I care about. Like
absolutely,
I write for CZ about things because I think they're really cool things, and I like taking this thing I like and putting it in front of someone's face, going, "Look at this thing! I love this thing! It's so great!" And I get a lot of criticism sometimes that I just want like the attention to be on me for whatever reason.
Absolutely. I found that one of the most perplexing criticisms I ever got was that attention whore thing. That description of I find that perplexing because
some people are.
Oh, sure, of course.
Wouldn't say that it's not a real thing.
No,
there probably are times, I think it's true for everyone, where I've kind of done something for the attention or whatever. Like, we're human beings, we're flawed. But like, I just can't emphasize enough that I just do this crap for Eve because I think it's really cool.
I am much better in the background behind the camera than I am in the other side of it. And I've thought about being on the AT. Commentator. Again, this year I thought about it. I was like, well, that would be kind of a cool experience. Maybe I should try. But I am not, and I have had to over the years, be in front of the camera multiple times for interviews or be on or to support things. And the only way I can do it is if I believe strongly in the thing that I'm doing. But I'm horribly uncomfortable the entire time I'm doing it. I don't like it. And I like being on the other side of that. Like
there is an extreme satisfaction in getting people to have a good time. Like at the last Eve Nottingham I went to, I ended up I was down to cast something like a fifth of the tournament, and I ended up casting like 2/3 of it to like the crowd, and just like playing off the crowd, getting laughs, having a good time, and just like reveling in having a good time with people, and like providing people fun and providing people happiness, and like that's the joy you can get from stuff like being a fleet commander. That stuff you can get from like even being like a web IT guy that runs the forum Free Alliance, like seeing people use the thing you've made to have fun and enjoy stuff. Like that is so rewarding and brilliant.
It's incredibly rewarding, absolutely. And that's when I produce art or I produce something and people enjoy it. That's the empowerment. It's not about me being important or getting attention. It's about them expanding their enjoyment of whatever experience they're having, and me being the implementer of that. That I implemented that. It sprang forth from the creative well of my soul and helped people, right? And that's really what it is about more than anything. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fascinating. I find I would never. I'm not the guy that's going to get on stage. I would be the writer or the director of that production. Or, well, you don't have one since it's improv. But my role, where I would find my joy, is in being the one that put that together. And
helping people. I got into maths as well.
Right.
Like don't get me wrong. I love maths for its abstract elegance and beauty. But I completed a project at the beginning of this year. Which was a way to mathematically model the spread of tuberculosis through
Nice.
through cities and populations of various sizes. It was a really cool project that I built, and like
Nice.
I really like helping people, whether it's like on an entertainment front or being like happy and stuff. Like I've always said that my life goal is to be like warm and happy. Like I'm not like this career driven person that a lot of people are, especially in scientific field a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
Like I'm not trying to be like, I'm not working to be a famous actor or anything. I just like, I want to be happy and I want other people to be happy, and then like that I'm good with that.
Well, that's a laudable goal, and I think that more people should focus on that when it comes to living their lives than the other things. And a lot of times, by focusing on what you're talking about, and the other things happen by accident.
Yeah, I mean, I
know.
used to be very different. I was very kind of ambitious and all that stuff, and I wanted to do all the things. But I've had a history of very, very bad problems with mental health and depression and, all that stuff.
Oh, sure.
Kind of like that, going through that really helps you kind of crystallize who you are and what you want from things.
Absolutely.
And like, again, that's one of the reasons why in Eve, I'm more like, this thing's really cool, I'm going to go do this thing. And it makes me happy, and I don't care necessarily whether or not I'm supposed to be ready to do it, or if I've got the skill points, or if I've got the experience. I'm just going to try and do it and learn about it from the people I care about. And then if people want to be grumpy about the thing I'm doing, whether or not it's about me doing it, whether about it's the thing itself, that's great. If you don't like the thing, you don't have to do the thing.
You don't have to do the thing. And it's a very healthy attitude, I think, in general. And there's no substitute for doing as far as learning goes. You plunge right in there and learn as you go, and apply that knowledge. And I think that's the kind of information, that's the kind of knowledge and learning that sticks with you. Yeah. Too, instead of reading it out of a book, and we have to do all those things. But that's what I tell people in our alliance and in Stay Frosty. There's no, I can tell you how to solo this ship, or I can tell you how to fit your frigate, and I can tell you all these things, and I will, and will help you. But there's no way that I'm going to be able to do that enough to make you a great pilot. The only way you're going to be a great pilot is to get out there and do it. And you're going to die a lot. You're going to lose ships, and that is just going to take time. And nothing's going to substitute that.
If you speak to people who are really in the know about solo PvP and listen to them talk about Suetonia, it's like a lot of them will say that Suetonia is the best frigate pilot, currently in the game.
Right.
And they won't really even mention the fact that he just knows so much about them. Like, the big thing that they'll talk about a lot of the time, at least when I talk to them, is just his mechanical ability. Right. Just like being absolutely on point, activating, deactivating, heating all the modules, like when to approach, when to orbit, when to slingshot, all that stuff. Just like the raw mechanical skill he has when flying that class of ship, like the crazy kills he gets with the damn Crystal, for example. Like it, ignoring all the learned knowledge he has, which is a vast, impressive thing in its own right. His raw mechanical ability is incredible, and you can only learn that through years and years of practice.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way around it. There's no way around hard work, really, and it applies in Eve too as well. So, hey, I think we should probably stop. We could probably go on for a long time, but why don't we do this? Well, and I've said this before to people, we'll catch up again later. We'll do a volume 2 sometime down the road. All right, and I really, really, really appreciate it. I think I've learned a lot. And I hope you have enjoyed your time.
Absolutely. I love talking about things I care about, even if, like, sometimes it annoys people, but, like, hopefully there are some people listening who are also passionate about the things I'm passionate about and just had a nice time hearing someone else care about the thing they care about. Because I know I love it when I hear other people talk about the thing I care about.
It's very encouraging, isn't it, to also hear from other people that you might not even know that, it's kind of validation. It's a validation in a way. It's a stamp of approval. It's, it helps you to realize that you're not crazy, you're not alone. There's other people who feel the same way you do about a subject, whatever that subject might be, and that by doing that, it's a shared sort of experience that we can all have, and it uplifts you. If anybody
ever wants to get in contact with me to talk about cool things that they're interested in or that we might have shared interest in, I'm always available on like Twitter and in game and all that good stuff.
Excellent. Well, you take care and have a great rest of your day. And thanks for stopping by the lounge. And
always a pleasure, Rixx.
All right, Apothne. You take care, and I will talk to you soon.
See you, buddy.